You still see me, I assume, but
Yep,
editing
I
will
still
take
see you. You're a
place.
little
So
glitchy, but you see me in good quality.
yeah, you're perfect.
Cool. Yeah, it'll
So
be good then on the
first
recording.
thing, first thing I want to talk about with you specifically is obviously the Coffray Project in general. Are you aware of them and who they are and what they're working on?
Big time. Oh yeah.
Okay, so the second Sphinx talk is what's basically all the rage at the moment. And I actually just had a chat with Armando, and I'm getting kind of two sides here. So I'm curious what you think. Armando seems to think that he wants to be cautious, let's put it that way. And Filippo's the
Yeah.
exact opposite. He seems very certain of what he's found. And then I have my own theories because of the symmetry involved and how the ancient Egyptians were absolutely obsessed with and big believers in everything symmetry related. So it makes
Yep.
sense from all sorts of ways. But where do you stand?
Well, I absolutely trust the SAR scans and what they're seeing. I have enough confidence in that technology to know that there's not a lot of room for error in this situation. It's pretty clear as day there's something there. And as far as being cautious and making sure in this industry that we're in right now, or this disclosure moment, it seems like if we were told the full truth today, it would be a real problem for a lot of people, and there would be so much spiraling that happens. I think that that's really a controlled process right now. I think there's people who are being threatened not to go fully forward with the truth. I think that it needs to come out in a certain way. There's people like me with my research, and it's been very standoffish from many people in the disclosure industry, which is crazy because you would think at least talking about things and getting down to the science would be a logical standpoint for people who make a career out of this. However, there definitely seems to be like some strings that are pulling people to conform to a type of narrative or a release that is more savvy for our population. And I think a lot of people agree that that's a wise move at this point. So, I just go off of the science for me. Like I put it on all my shirts because it's like I truly trust the science. I don't trust the scientists, which is the big common misconception. I like to do the science myself and see the scans and make what I can from it.
And that's how we should be doing things. We should be confirming them for ourselves always.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what your thoughts are for this is my personal hangup. Everyone wants to believe this, and we all jump straight to all sorts of reasons for why we should. But the history involved here, Herodotus and Plato, them describing labyrinths here, Paul White, Howard Weiss, George Reisner, all these different researchers claiming to see things under the Giza Plateau. So where do we put that if all of this ends up being a conspiracy or a psyop or just false readings, bad science, whatever it may be? I mean, can we really look at this and ignore all that? Because I don't see another way to
Yeah.
look at this other than with all of the evidence.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We have to absolutely. I mean, Plato's a great example here because, the whole Atlantis thing. And then you look at ancient Egypt and what they talked about with Chem. And you have these more ancient than ancient places that are talked about all over the world. And, you look at Göbekli Tepe, how it was purposely
Mm.
buried, is what they say, and how ridiculous of a structure it is and what its purpose is, the iconography. So I truly believe that there's absolutely more. And another great example is look at the UFO files that they're starting to release. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
44,000 documents that our government has on
Yep.
this. Clearly, something's going on. And it's a fact at this point that it's being held from us for whatever reason. And I think that's really, there's no, it's a fact at this point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess at this point, you have to truly ask yourself, what are the odds that UFO disclosure happens just hypothetically while this discovery happens in Egypt and they're not connected? What are the odds of that being true? And if you can't live with that number in your head, then something is off. So you got to put these things together and understand that this is history that's not only unfolding, but it's changing what's already happened that we believe about our history, but it's also opening all sorts of new doors for new possibilities going forward. So,
Yep.
I mean, it's hard not to get excited about this because I mean, a researcher and a conspiracy theorist, I've always kind of wanted to believe these things, but at the same time been very cautious because there are psyops. There are absolutely all sorts of different things that happen that are programmed in such a way to make you believe a certain thing.
Look, what if it really happened?
What if what really happened?
I think something's taken over our school. Body Snatchers is a story somebody made up, dingus. It's located in the fiction section of the
Yeah,
library.
so is Schindler's List. Look, all fiction is based on some truth, right? What does Miss Berg teach us in English 101? Write what you know. How do we know this writer guy
Jack Finnick.
didn't encounter aliens in his high school, which led him to write a book about an alien invasion?
Your conspiracy theory is flawed.
How so?
Well, Jack Finney's The Body Snatchers is a blatant rip-off of The Puppet Masters by Robert Heinlein, so you can completely disregard that entire work.
Whatever. The point is, they're here, they've been here, and they're here again.
You know, Casey, I think you've interacted with the flagpole one too many times.
Look, how do you know there's not a conspiracy? Look, maybe the X-Files is right. You know, where do all these movies come from anyway? How do we know Spielberg, Lucas, Sonnenfeld, Emmerich haven't been visited by aliens? You know, maybe they're aliens themselves. Maybe they're simply preparing us for what's to come.
You know what, Casey? It's fiction, okay? It's science fiction.
Exactly. Everybody gets hung up on the science part, which has nothing to do with it. They're getting at us to the fiction.
So, aliens have just been setting us up over the years, creating this happy little make-believe existence with their E.T. and their Men in Black movies, just so that nobody would believe it if it really happened.
I think so. Yeah. Well, you're not buying this, are you?
No, I'm not. But it's kind of cool.
It's always good to be cautious, but I think we've grown to be too cautious. We're not willing
Yeah.
to accept anything. We're not willing to let anything in. No new ideas. I mean, that's not a good way to look at this because there's going to be so much new information coming out about this specifically. It's going to blow anyone's mind, but it's going to be really hard to accept right off the bat. And this is where
Yeah.
we need to kind of figure out a solution to not only do it properly and, well, I guess I'm on the fence of whether or not slowly, but definitely properly, but at the same time, do it to where anyone who wants to be educated about this can be. The roadblocks and the red
Yeah.
tape are a problem. So, I mean, any thoughts as to how we can move forward on that note? How everyone can somehow work together with everything that's going on?
I, I think one side of the opposition is trying to divide us and divide and conquer type situation. And the other side is obviously there to try to get to the truth. And so that battle seems to be why it would be such a debate. And you can see it in our Congress and in many different places, religious beliefs, all the holy wars and spiritual wars that have gone on for thousands of years, entire civilizations like the Cathar people that were removed, the Crusades, all these massive events that had very bloody outcomes over this topic of disclosure. And disclosure doesn't just have to be UFOs. There's a lot to it. There's
Mm-hmm.
disclosure just means kind of like the occult, things that are hidden, right? So
Yep.
there could be aliens, there could be UFOs, demons, and angels, all could be real at the same time. And so this divide is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing certain people speak out that, oh, it's all demonic, and some people are speaking out that it's the Galactic Federation coming to help us. And there's all these different theories and ideas, but most of them are divided in a sense. I mean, it could be all of the above too. And I think that's a really better way to go into this, is to be open-minded to all of these things, because if you're not and you close your mind to something, then it could be a real gut wrencher when it comes to be true. Kind of like the thing with Plato's work and stuff. What happens when it's proven or disproven? And I think that's a big factor. And then obviously the reason why. And it could go both ways here too. We're dualistic beings, and so it could be because we can't handle it. It could also be to create a mystery, to give us motivation and wisdom to overcome certain things that we've been challenged to. And so it could be the divine, it could be demonic, it could be aliens trying to help us from another place or another time. There's a talk like the Anunnaki had their Ajiji species, and they were a slave species that made the roads and things of that nature, and they were replaced because they rebelled against the Anunnaki. Well, if the Anunnaki
Mm-hmm.
are the Elohim in the Bible, and they are angelic type beings, which they're clearly shown with angel looking wings on the depictions from Sumeria and all over the world, or at least in the now even in Mexico. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a very plausibility. So how do you rebel against something like that if you're in a physical being form and they're in a light being, or whatever they are, ultra dimensional type thing? And so there's another question, is like, where did all these civilizations go? A lot of like the Mayan and different places, it seems as almost like as they disappeared. There's no mass gravesite. There's not thousands of bones everywhere. I mean, either this stuff completely eroded and there's no trace of it, Or maybe they rebelled and this was the Ajiji ancestor species that the Native Americans talked about, and they jumped ship. Maybe they
Mhm.
got out of here through portals and things of that nature. We find evidence of portals all over the world. We hear in our ancient texts about hellgates and stargate type things. So it's very possible that they found out the technology and got so advanced that they were able to rebel by just piecing out.
Yeah, you basically laid out my entire theory, word for word. I mean, that's what I believe. I believe there's more to it, but I believe that not only did I want to get back to like the mystery school foundation of reality part of this in a second, but they absolutely had some form of advanced technology in some way. And we hear stories about people like in the Navy seeing sightings at the ocean. What are the odds this advanced technology or this advanced race with this advanced technology wouldn't be advanced enough to go live under the ocean if something bad happened, right? Or possibly even just leave altogether. But they also could have had, on the flip side of that coin, something that was extremely powerful that absolutely destroyed an entire planet that used to exist where our asteroid belt currently is. And a big chunk of
Tiamat.
that's, yeah, big chunk of it still exists to this day.
Yep.
It formed an elliptical orbit, which goes really far out, comes back in, and that's what's causing the cyclical nature of our cataclysms. So
Yeah.
that's something to think about. That's something I personally think about, but it's just a theory, 100% speculation, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it would
That
explain
that
multiple pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, that word you use, cyclical, I think is extremely important. The sickle
Yep.
was the symbol for Saturn, and Saturn in Masonic and Gnostic beliefs, they believe that that's the demiurge, or there's been a cross comparison to where that is the demiurge. And so if this material world was created and there's all of this control and things of that nature, the cyclical nature of the souls being reincarnated,
Mhm.
all of these things are all cyclical, which I think is
Mhm.
something that we have to look at as a possible thing. In
Yeah.
Mexico, where we've discovered all these objects, Saturn, the planet with the rings, is depicted on hundreds, if not thousands, of these pieces. And what that means is there was clearly, I don't want to say it was necessarily Saturn worship, but it was definitely at the height of their importance to document right next to the gods and other beings, which could very well be the watchers or the archons talked about in some of these ancient texts.
Yep.
So it's interesting that pattern.
Oh, yeah. And actually, on that note, I had this, and I want to preface this 100% by saying it's just speculation, but I had a thought the other day while watching the Odyssey by Homer. Well, one of the many recordings of it on YouTube, and I can't help but wonder. I've heard these random thoughts and theories over the years where maybe there's another book of the Bible, right? Is there any
Yeah.
other book that is even remotely close to the Bible as much as the Odyssey by Homer and the Iliad? It almost seems like those are supposed to be together, telling one story. What are your thoughts there?
It's definitely up there. I feel the Pistis Sophia is the same way. It's right up there. That book is supposedly Jesus's teachings to the disciples. I mean, it's an entire book of it, of wisdom and teaching from the Christ supposedly. And this book was hidden for 2,000 years. So, or yeah, roughly right around. It was a second century book, and we didn't find it till the late 1800s. So um that's kind of ridiculous in itself, and how
Mhm.
much wisdom is inside of this book. No pun intended. Sophia means wisdom in Hebrew, but I think that's a real piece of the pie too. And some of these ancient texts, like Homer's work, what he knew and what he had access to in some of these libraries and places that were burned down or destroyed over war. We don't have access to that anymore, so we don't know what he based all this off of specifically. And I think that's also really important to note, is that in his time there was a lot more stuff available literature wise, especially in Europe, than what there is today.
Oh yeah, and that leads right into the mystery schools, which I wanted to come back to. I mean, my good friend Trevor Grossi is actually the person to go to if you're interested in this topic. He's got a mountain of evidence and a whole lot of videos on the subject, but there's
Yeah.
always these rumors that we've heard about, especially in this topic, of the initiation process that supposedly housed or was housed underneath the pyramids or in this labyrinth. I'm not going to say with any certainty where it was, but apparently you go through this process and it would have awakened these divine abilities that live inside everyone. So the process
Yeah.
of going through it is open to anyone, and the timeline which Jesus disappears off into Egypt for a portion that the Bible doesn't talk about, there's speculation and even rumors of evidence saying that maybe he went there and went through this process. So I couldn't pass through this conversation without at least mentioning that and see your
Yeah.
thoughts, because it kind of does line up.
It absolutely does. Yeah.
So, I mean, what does that mean if that's true? How far can you take that thought?
Well, you look at someone like Chris Bledsoe's theories and how this
Yes.
also the age of Aquarius prophecies and
Hmm.
things of us coming into a new knowledge and a new age that was more close to the
Yes.
divine and spiritual understanding. Spiritual understanding, I think, is the big one here. We have a level of consciousness that we understand, but very little. And I think that's all related together. Is we're just starting to open the real can of fruit and there's going to be things like that pop up that are going to probably quantum leap us into a whole new era, um, one way or the other. I mean, even just with archaeological finds like the second Sphinx that they found, what the head is on it is actually more of a curiosity to me than anything. Because if it's a lion or a jackal or something of that nature, then this would make maybe more sense of how history unfolded and then how the rise of man and these ancient sites were taken over by the humans or the pharaohs in this case, and how it was once ruled by gods like it shows on the walls.
Mhm. Yeah, and the recarving of the second Sphinx, it seems to be a hot topic this week. Either
Yeah,
most people I'm seeing are saying it had to have been a lion, it had to have been a man. So I haven't made a decision on what I believe just yet. I still think there
me
needs to be a
neither.
whole lot more research done before we can confirm most of it. But it what the only hang up I have is the sheer amount of other sphinxes that exists in the world. It's not just the ones in Giza. There's a lot all around the world, and they all have that same head. But I'm willing
Yeah,
to concede that maybe they were all recarved after the original. That's still possible. But
yeah,
that's something to think about. If the original was a lion, then why were all the others carved differently? And if the
right.
original wasn't, then why wasn't the original carved the same way? Well, the original Sphinx, I should say, because it was absolutely recarved at some point. So there's all sorts of
Yep,
unanswered questions that need to be ironed out before we have any certainty there. But
yeah,
it
yep.
it's a
And
fascinating
in
topic.
Mexico, we found
Yes.
numerous sphinxes, and they do have the head of the pharaoh. Like I can turn my camera here and show you one. But like this, it has more of a gray alien looking head though. And so we know that the
Wow.
noses and possibly the head was restructured on the Sphinx. And that could be the thing too, is they may have had different eyes and different looks to the heads. And those were redone. And that's why people think it was a completely, redone job. But in reality, it was just the humanization. If you go to Greece and Rome and you look at all the gods and the stories of the angels and all of this stuff, they all had human heads. But before humans were created, which is rumored 8,000 years ago, what was the ancestor species? And were these resets also changing the art and the perception of all this stuff? And that's why you have, scribes and people who were dedicated to do this work under a specific guideline for these temples because they needed to conform to not the old way, but the new way. And that's why, like, there was a gate in Egypt that was there at the plateau, very ancient gate that they took down. I've got pictures of it the day they were taking it down, but it's clearly a gray alien face that's on this thing. So it's very possible that there was a transition that occurred, and that's why we have the defacing of so many monuments.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly the point I was going to ask you about. Good call. It just seems like a lot of our heritage has been either covered up or plastered over or chipped off right at the crucial point. So it just seems like that's an awful big coincidence for that to have happened
Yeah.
by accident. But about the Mexico side of this specifically, were you by chance with Trevor when he was down there recently, or was that not you?
Nope. No, I haven't been down there with him. I know him and Frank did a lot of work down there here recently and have some
Okay.
major announcements coming out. Um, Yeah,
Yeah, the,
it's actually grown a lot. You know, there's a lot of people tying into Mexico. We had PhD anthropologists down there for 8 months last year, doing a lot of different research. There's over 500 lab tests that are going to be released, as well as a published paper. And that's Vanessa Meligari, and you know, she runs the Aslan Stone Project, which is a team of people that are all researching this. So it's definitely ripples in the pool at this point. I'm really excited. I haven't got to see what Trevor and those guys found down there and the story behind it yet. I know they're working on quite a few releases and had to keep it you know, hush hush until
yeah,
it's ready. So I'm
I don't want to
excited. I'm
overstep,
excited.
so I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about, but I just wanted to at least address it. But let's,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, how did you get into Mexico? Let's hear your portion of that story at least.
Yeah. My good friend had a buddy that went down to Mexico with Mark Russell, the archaeologist in Abuelos, and down there in Jalisco, they dug up all these pieces. Mark actually had an interview with Scott Waltar where they did a show on America Unearthed, and they carbon dated these pieces at like 12,000 years old. And so, you know, Scott said this was going to change history if it's true, but extraordinary proof requires extraordinary evidence. And at that point, the topic got a lot of hate and a lot of pushback from the mainstream. And so Scott's show was not renewed. And so when my buddy came to me and he told me that these things were 10,000 years old that were sitting on my kitchen table, I was in such disbelief. I mean, I laughed at him. I straight made a wager against him that I could prove that to be not true. And so I reached out to like Linda Moulton Howe and multiple different celebrity personalities who specialize in ufology and investigative journalism. And I worked with Linda for some time, and eventually she just ghosted me one day. And as I'm
Hmm.
continuing to research this, she had me create these catalogs and start documenting certain things. And then it was just like a ghost town. I couldn't get a hold of her. I was supposed to be on her show, and I mean, it's been years now, and still it's just a ghost town. Eventually, we found out that there was an NDA within the Prometheus Corporation that doesn't allow them to specifically comment on this topic publicly. So that was really, you know, certain things like that started popping up and started to make me even more curious, you know. So I started working with different expeditions and doing digs in Tula. Tula, the items that were coming out just, excuse me, they looked so much different than the pieces from Abuelos. And I think
How
that was
so?
really something weird because they had a lot of how so well the materials are different. I can show you an example here. Hang on. Just getting
So
over a cold, so I apologize.
do you think you were getting pushback for the Mexico dig specifically, or just pushback from the topic in general?
Well, I think this is the topic. This is where a majority of it's being found. I won't isolate it purely to Mexico because it's also the same with the Nazca mummies and whatnot. But you know, you can see the iconography here. This is from Tula Hidalgo, and you know the iconography here, the way it's carved, the type of stone that it is, very different uh,
Wow.
in that situation. So I just didn't believe that any of it was genuine. I thought maybe the Abuelo stuff was, but I started researching Tula heavily, and you know when they started finding cave systems and petroglyphs and things that completely took me. I mean, biology. It I eventually had to just open my mind and stop being such a skeptic about it because I had evidence that made me believe it personally. And so once I knew that, I realized, man, I got to publish some books on this. We need to get this out and get it protected, get it into the hands of the people, because it seems like it's been something that's been you know, covered up for some time on purpose. There was I mean, I would go to institutions and universities and reach out to Billy Carson and all these type of celebrities, and it was a straight ghost town. I would corner them at events, and I would go to these alien UFO places, and they would be the most standoffish. There was a few people that were pretty receptive, but there was a stigma inside of this industry that seemed so unnatural that I just couldn't sit with myself and try to pass the potato. At one point, I just decided that we have to start doing the research ourselves and getting down to business.
Yep. Well said. Well said. And I think that nails it. That puts it perfectly because although we all kind of research these things on our own, we do need to know what's right and what's wrong, but we absolutely need to have the confidence to research these things on our own. Because there was a
Yes.
portion where I don't know, about halfway through when we believed the disclosure process was unfolding, where we started asking ourselves, is this real? We really make a difference? Like we all had that portion,
Yeah.
but something happened that pushed us through it. But we need to look at this in such a way where one person can make a difference, because there's all sorts of one persons that already have, and people need to be aware of who those people are, because
Yeah.
we're working with them. I mean, I can tell you with my own eyes, I've seen these people. They're
Yep.
actually real. They're actually boots on the ground doing absolutely amazing work. So they need our
Trevor's a great
support.
example. I mean, his
Yeah,
work on Egypt is
100%.
it makes Zahi's work look very, very subpar, which is unfortunate for Zahi considering he has all the resources in the world to be able to do things, and it's such a lackluster process. I mean, we were supposed to have Matt Bill and being under the Sphinx and exploring the cavity and all this stuff was supposed to come out, and it was approved. Still haven't seen anything from it, you know. And I mean, things take time, but
Yeah,
nonetheless, we're almost halfway into 26, and it's still a crickets festival here. So, I definitely feel that there's like we talked about earlier, a real orchestration in disclosure, and anyone
yep,
that's crouching too close to it with a real public expression, I think is. I don't know if they're being threatened or if they're being just told the truth and logic prevails. I mean, I'll be open minded about it. I don't want to write people off because I'm a fan
yeah,
of a lot of these people, and I like their work and I like what they have to say. So it's
same.
hard for me when they're so lacking logic and science, and claiming to be a scientist practically. You know, a lot of them aren't, but they claim to be or talk like they are, and I think that's really a disadvantage of it when you don't have any credible evidence or anything to go along with what you're saying.
I mean, one thing that just hit my mind in just such a way is the way you said that everyone you talked to didn't seem like they wanted to talk about it at one point, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
the people you mentioned, I actually just met recently at a conference, and they were the exact opposite. But here's my point. Is that almost evidence of some sort of manipulation on these people? It's not like everyone would just deny talking about it, right? Doesn't make any
No,
sense.
and
It's
if you listen to people like Greer and some of these people that have said, you know, he's had numerous threats, and I mean, yeah, I think there's it's a real topic of discussion because it has to do probably with religion and other things, wars and stuff that have gone on, and
right.
you know, when we get the truth, we're going to question all of our superior resources. The government's going to be put into question. I mean, even right now, just with the files they've released. uh, I mean, man, they were lying to us for a long time. Many different presidents, many different
Yeah.
administrations that, you know, have hundreds of people below them, and this was kept for whatever purpose.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, I think it's all in good time, and it all supposed
Mhm.
to happen a specific way, and
Yep.
divine timing might be more true here than anything. It might not even be
Absolutely.
evil forces threatening these people. It might just be the divine timing of your gut telling you to do something, and I don't know, but it's been a
The new
real
knowledge.
yeah, yeah, it's been a real
And
unfolding for sure.
one pill I had to swallow, and then we can kind of close it out unless you have any last thoughts. But one thing I had to swallow, and it was hard to do, was that it's not an entire government that's bad here. It's select individuals who chose to break the rules for their own self interest and carry that out over generations. Those are the people who are at blame here. We actually have good, decent people in positions of power now actually making a difference. And they're
Yep,
making changes for every single one of us. And those people cannot do this without our support, period.
right.
So, one pill I had to swallow the hard way is basically admitting that, yeah, the government sucks, but at the same time, it's not everybody in the government. It's not an
Yeah,
entire idea of government that sucks. It needs a whole lot of work, and it's been changing over time. It's what our amendments are, but these people just need our support. That's all I'm saying.
yeah,
The good people who are doing things that are changing things for the better absolutely need our support. So just think on
yeah.
that. But you
Oh,
can close it out if
absolutely.
you have any last thoughts, man.
Yeah, I will add something. You know that the duality that we live in, or the physics that we have, forever action has an equal or opposite. You know, we can't expect a Democratic front runner or a Republican front runner to be perfect because everybody's going to act with dualism. So it doesn't matter which side you choose. It doesn't matter this if you divide and stick with something so faithfully that you ignore the fact that no one's perfect. I think that's really the big fail. You know, we have to be open minded that everybody that we interact with is going to make a mistake probably half the time, or at least somewhere to create that balance. There's a balance that we have inside of us.
Yep.
Fred Flintstone had the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, and he would ask, oh, should I go to the bowling alley or should I go home with my wife? And I think that's really the temptation that even our Savior faced in the desert with Satan himself. There's clearly a temptation here in all the stories of all the gods in Greece and Rome. They all had good days and bad days and pros and cons about them. And I think that's really a nature of our construct that we live in, the universe that we're here with. And so we shouldn't expect anything different.
Just about finding harmony and balance. You said it perfectly. Well
Yes.
said. Well, thank you for chatting, man. Thanks for taking the time to chat
Yeah.
with me. Stay in touch because
Anytime,
there's a
man.
whole lot going on. I'm trying to do my best to help Trevor and Filippo get what they need at the moment, but spread the word. He
Yeah.
needs all the help he can get with getting like computer and storage. So anyone who's interested in helping, by all means, reach out. But reach out to Trevor or the Archaeological Rescue Foundation. So, and if
Heck yeah.
are you working with anyone? You want to do a shout out for anybody or any of your own work?
Um,
If not, no biggie. I just wanted to give you the
Not at this
option.
time. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just me pretty much, man.
Same here.
If you want it done right, you got to do it yourself type thing. That's what my dad always
Yep.
said. And I hated to admit it, but at this point in time, I've come across so many contracts and different things with working with others that it's just, it seems best to just push forward. But no, I
Yep.
mean, Trevor's project and everything, I support 100%. And I share those guys' stuff all the time because they are really on the ground doing the work and really deserve to be researched and looked at by the entire academic body.
Yeah. They're onto something new, and I think I hope that they're going to scan a lot of the major sites as well. There's talks about other sites, but right now I believe it's mostly speculation, nothing set in stone
No, no,
100%, but
that
don't quote me on that.
I can tell you factually that SAR scans have been done in Jalisco.
They have. Okay, so I'm
Yes.
not sure. I don't want to overstep my
Not by
boundaries.
that team though. Another team.
Okay.
This satellite can be rented for money, and you can do those scans anyone. So there's
Wow.
other teams that are doing this in different parts of the world right now, and I can confirm
Good to
that
know.
with visual confirmation.
Thank you for mentioning that. I did not know that, and I don't think
Yep.
most people were aware of that. I think at the beginning of most of this, there was like 2 or 3 people doing scans, right? There was one Japanese team. There was obviously SAR scans, and then there was the third one, on which I always forget their name, but Scan Pyramids Techno. Maybe that's the same one. But I believe there was one more who was doing the scans there. But most people don't realize that you can do this on your own. You can rent these
Yeah.
things. You can check satellite scans for all sorts of things. But I thought it
Yeah.
was interesting that you just said that you can rent your own, and I never really thought of that, even though it sounds so obvious. But nobody's really doing the scans at Giza anymore, I don't think, right? I think everyone's gotten what they wanted out of there, and everyone has moved to another site, and I can't help but wonder why. But that's
Right.
100% speculation. But anyway,
That's
those
the
are
real
just
question.
yeah,
The unfolding, there's something there guiding us, and I don't want to
yeah,
judge. I'm not here to judge at this point. Like that's the big takeaway. Don't judge. Keep an open mind
yep,
and ride the wave.
yeah. That's all we can do. All right, well,
Yep.
I'm gonna let you go, man. I think I could probably talk to you for hours, it seems. So,
We'll do it again
um,
sometime in person.
yeah, yeah, let's do that for sure. I'll reach out and stay in
Righteous
touch,
man.
man. Thanks, man.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
You too.